smiles from Avery and her mom Drew as Governor Mike DeWine signs Avery's bill into law. This moment happening after the bipartisan legislation passed unanimously by lawmakers.
State Representative Kevin Miller, welcome back to Message from the House.
Thank you. It's great to be here again.
Solo episode this time.
Okay. All right. We can do this.
No pressure. You got it. House Bill 247 has officially been passed and signed by the governor. Talk me through kind of the background of this bill.
Sure. This bill was born, just over a year ago, I guess, out of a conversation I had with my local dog warden, Larry Williams. Larry asked to meet with me and kind of just talk about some of the problems and issues with Ohio's dog laws. And essentially, kind of going through some of his concerns, that's kind of how this bill was brought forward. And then obviously, as we moved along, there was a lot of input from folks that have been injured by dogs. And a brave young girl by the name of Avery Russell and her so sad story came forward. And that's who we actually named the bill after.
For background and even just my own curiosity, was this something on your radar or that you knew had been a problem before, one of your constituents brought it up to you? People think of dogs as, their furry best friends and things like that.
Sure. Honestly, no, it
Yeah.
wasn't really on my radar. It was through that constituent meeting, with Larry, where he explained the issues and the problems. And I think that's why it's so important for us to be engaged with our constituents, is because, a lot of times the best bills come forward from them. And, for Larry, and I guess maybe to kind of just dive into the bill.
Yeah, I would love to.
He talked about the issues currently, and one of the biggest ones was, if there was a dog attack and someone was seriously injured from an attack, he did not have the ability to immediately seize that dog unless that dog had already been designated as a dangerous or a vicious dog. And I did not know that. And my initial thoughts were, that's ridiculous. What do you mean? You have a dog that just attacked and disfigured someone, as in Avery's case, and you do not have the legal authority to seize that dog? And he said, no, not unless it was previously designated as a dangerous or vicious dog. To which I said, well, we've got to change that. And that was one of the significant things we did with the bill. The bill actually it was kind of a total rewrite of the dangerous and vicious dog laws. I found out through Larry that even the prosecutors had a hard time with the language because it was outdated. It was difficult to decipher. It was interpreted in different ways. So the bill actually is a complete rewrite of the dog laws in the state of Ohio.
And for folks who may not know, for those that have, dogs that fall under that dangerous category, what are the pre-existing stipulations that they have to follow?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So some of the things we did in the bill was we enhanced some current requirements. So instead of a judge being able to mandate insurance, we are requiring it under the bill. So if you have a dangerous or a vicious dog that has been designated as such, you have got to carry $100,000 of liability insurance on that canine. There's some other things that we did as well. So we increased the fencing requirements. Current law just says that you must have a fence. The yard must be fenced. Well, for some folks, and this was something that our dog wardens enlightened me on, is they put up a flimsy little snow fence or something that clearly is not going to, appropriately restrain that dog. And they say, hey, I've got a fence. We changed the law that says it must be must be constructed of, sufficient material in order to keep that dog restrained. So things like that, those were very, very important. Another component that we did in this bill, and this is applicable to Avery's situation because she was at a friend's house and was attacked when they were playing. So basically what we did is we inserted language that said when an invitee or a guest is present, that dog must be kept in a separate place, right? They cannot have access to that individual. And in Avery's case, that would have prevented her disfiguring injuries.
Wow. Did it used to have to be a specific breed?
Yeah, so that's a great question. A lot of people think that our dogs are designated based on breed. There was a law back in the day that designated certain breeds, and that was rescinded.
Okay.
So now it's based totally upon the actions of the dog, which I agree with. It shouldn't be breed specific because there's certain breeds that have a higher propensity to maybe be more dangerous, I guess, than others. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're concentrating on the behavior of the dog and not just a specific breed.
Very important work that you're doing. Do you think that your law enforcement background kind of helped with this?
Well, I think with my law enforcement background, it helped me to understand kind of the process. So another thing I'll talk about is due process that we made sure
Yeah.
was in this bill. So one of the things that we did was we said that dog that attacks that individual can immediately be seized. Well, with that, there's due process, right? So there's a mandatory probable cause hearing that needs to be held. So if you take the dog, there's got to be due process. The other part in there that we added was that a dog that creates or causes serious physical injury and or death, if there's probable cause to show that dog did that and was not provoked, so it was an unprovoked attack, that dog will be put down. Well, there's got to be a hearing.
Right.
The judge has to decide, whether or not that dog was unprovoked. So it's very important to have that, that due process. And I think understanding that from a law enforcement perspective, helped me to kind of work through some of those issues, with the dog wardens and the prosecutors and some of their concerns and things of that nature.
All right. So, talk me through this process, right? I think it had its first hearing back in May.
Mhm.
So, what has it been like to see this process come all the way through and now, having it signed by the governor? What's, reflection, what's it been like?
Yeah. So actually, all the way from May till now, some people say, well, oh boy, that's been a long time. Actually, in legislative terms,
Right.
it's been pretty quick. I will say that a lot of hard work was done by the interested parties. The Dog Wardens Association, the Humane Society was a huge advocate for getting some language right to make sure that they were not held accountable for things that were out of their control. So just meeting with all the different folks that this impacted was critical to get the bill to a place where we could get it across the finish line. I will say that historically, it's been very difficult to get bills that have been introduced in this arena across the finish line. One of the components of this bill is there were some increased penalties in here, and as you may or may not know, those are typically they can be controversial bills. Some folks they do not like to see any increase in penalties, and I understand that. But I think the difference between this and other bills that do that is this bill concentrated on the worst of the worst, right? So we're talking about the repeat offenders, the folks that have these animals that don't take that responsibility serious. And those were the folks that we tried to concentrate on, not just the casual owner where, I always use the story of Fluffy, right?
Yeah.
So Fluffy is a dog that just licks everybody to death. No indication that Fluffy is dangerous or vicious or has ever bitten anybody. Well, let's just say one day Fluffy snaps and happens to, God forbid, bite somebody, something significant. What I wanted to make sure is that individual, that owner, that dog owner, that the book wasn't thrown at them. That owner didn't have any indication that dog was going to do something. So, the penalties stay the same for them. Sure, they're going to face a penalty, but not like the cases of an individual who has a dangerous or vicious dog that has bit someone in the past, that has attacked somebody in the past, and then this owner failed to keep them restrained in a fenced yard, within their house, things of that nature. Those are the folks that we wanted to make sure that we were concentrating on with this bill.
Yeah, as you're explaining it, it really does sound like you said a total rewrite.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just so many different components of just tightening up or adding things in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, by doing that, we definitely have stronger dog laws here in Ohio and hoping to prevent cases such as Avery's across the state.
Yeah. And then, what have constituents said about it or even just community members like across the state? I'm sure many stories have come to light since then. What has the feedback been like?
The feedback has been extremely positive.
Yeah.
They're looking to hold folks accountable. And as I said, what this bill does is it goes after the worst of the worst, the ones that have these dangerous and vicious dogs, and it's holding them accountable. And that's what people want. They want people held accountable when they know that they're engaging in irresponsible behavior.
Well, State Representative Kevin Miller, congratulations. I know it's been, a long process, short process, like you said. And I really appreciate you coming on to talk about this.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me. Appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Quickly, you can follow us on our social media at Ohio House GOP Caucus on Facebook, Ohio House _GOP on Instagram, and OHR GOP Caucus on Twitter. You can subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks again.
Thanks so much.